was running far advanced than others, and then just 20 meters before the finish line, he stopped and looked behind. Spectators on the stadium were very surprised. They tell him that, go to the finish line. But he was still looking behind. Then he found that his colleague, his friend from the same country, comes near to him, then he restarted to the finish line. The person who got the red cap, he got gold medal. His friend on the right side got silver medal. Do you think this man is mentally disabled? There have been a lot of people, athletes, try to get equal right. Oscar Pistorius from South Africa. I know that he is now somewhat in legal case in his country, but you see, there is some devices on his legs. When he was born, there were no legs. Therefore, he is using cheetah flex foot. He wants to play in Paralympics and also in the Olympics. But he was not allowed to run in the Olympics because, according to the regulations, any technical device is not allowed. He appealed to the court, and then court decided that he is allowed. Therefore, he participated in 2012 London Olympics. Another case, Case Martin. He is a professional golfer in the United States. He had problems in breathing since birth. He asked to the PGA for him to use golf cart, but denied, rejected, because regulation said no cart, only walking. He appealed to the court, and the Supreme Court decided that he is allowed to use the cart. This is the fighting done by those people. Then the society, our society, what we have to do. Number one, I think the minimum right should be protected and promoted by the right-based approaches. There are international legal frameworks and also domestic frameworks based on the constitutions or specific law. But these legal frameworks are not enough. By this one, we have to see the implementation mechanism is provided or not. Number two, based on these rights-based approaches, disabled people have a right to access to sports facilities and programs. But based on this one, local government as well as central government has to do something. But they do what they neglect. Someone should monitor it. Therefore, I think the role of NGOs are very important. You are doing such a great job now. Number three, as George mentioned, the special facilities programs for the disabled people, that is not enough. They should be integrated into the one society, just one society. As I mentioned, Olympics and the Paralympics combined, and also in daily sports, people with disabilities and without disabilities, they need to get integrated sports facilities and the programs. Number four, public awareness. It is not a matter of law. It is a matter of our understanding, matter of our consciousness, matter of our devotion. As I mentioned, 10% of the population, they are regular member of our society. That's why we have to stop stigmatizing. Here, media's role is very important to improve public awareness. So if they are integrated into the one society, that means living together. So how? When we look at our neighbors without prejudice, when we look at our neighbors with a warmer heart, that is living together. Volunteering, sharing should be part of our life. The United Nations now has a specialist organization for the sports for the development and the peace, as you know. And there are also the international working groups on the child and youth development and the gender and the peace. The three organizations, three working groups are working very well with the very devoted state chairs and the secretariat. And we expect that another working group is going to be activated this summer. That is a working group on sports and the persons with disabilities. My country wants to join the activities of this working group. And if we can, we want to use sports to empowerment of the people of disabilities and also inclusion, integration. We are going to have a close consultation with the IPC, international federations, and the NGOs and the government. I want to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Ma. I want to request anybody who has any last question for George. George is very busy because he is going to be moderating a panel at the Habitat Center, so he will be leaving the panel now. But if there is any questions for George, now is your last chance till you meet him again.
Okay, it's just a comment actually, particularly on George and Janak in terms of attitude. And I think that crosses the boundaries of able, disability, financial restrictions, or whatever level we're looking at. There are people with any constraints. There will be certain people with a right attitude that actually move forwards and become role models for whatever their circumstances happen to be. And maybe it's the connection between that attitude becomes a common ground for everybody to work for. So just what I've heard with everybody and the panelists here, Ambassador Ma, the comments you made, that inclusion is particularly powerful for us. And I suppose if one thing I would like to see across is getting people to the activities. And that to me starts with infrastructure. If I look at the hotel here, how Janak's got up and down the escalators, I've no idea. Having seen him on that pole with a body strength, I do have a great idea. And I would just like people's thoughts on maybe that approach to an individual's attitude and how we foster that across any divide that we perhaps see, whatever the circumstance.
I just wanted to say, when you talk about a perception change, when you talk about understanding, then the way the politician responds, the way the bureaucrat responds, when the education, the human rights, the HRD ministry, when they invest in education, they would ensure, if they believe and recognize the potential of people with disability, their plans and their activities would reflect in their investment, which means all schools would have teachers who are properly trained, adequately trained, it would be an inclusive setup, and all that would come in. So I just wanted to repeat this, just in case that point was missed, that a change in attitude would immediately reflect in the way people take their decisions, the way they make their plans. And I think the thinking would be, and the word I'd like to leave behind with you is, becomes universal. Apple iPhone, for instance, is an example of a universally designed product. The iPhone can be used by blind people, by people who don't have hands, by people who are elderly, people who are young, everybody can. Because the design has accessibility features integrated into it. So this is actually a small example of how the world could be thought of when plans are made, programs are designed, processes are designed, products are designed. Think of the diversity who would use it. Thank you.
George, thank you so much for making the time to come and be with us. Oh, you have a question for George? Yes.
Ambassador. Yeah, first and foremost, I would like to say that this is a topical issue, and I would plead to Magic Bus that next time it should be on the plenary session for everyone to hear this. And it's just a suggestion. Wonderful comments, wonderful talk so far. I also want to ask Ambassador if it's possible people can have access to his presentation.
Yes, I'd like one.
I noticed everyone was busy writing it, and I wish I can have a copy of it. And it was moving very fast, I think, probably because of the time constraints. Yeah, and I think, finally, I just wanted to ask, we have levels of disability. Where I come from, some people have been placed somewhere, and they're suffering from leprosy, right? And would you allow them to swim in a swimming pool? Would you construct a game for them to play or something? Because other people have the perception that leprosy is contagious. So these are some of the levels, these are some of the questions that people ask. I want to ask whether you take into consideration all kinds of disability. Thank you.
Can I just answer, can I just say something to this gentleman about perceptions? Can I just say that it really is important to value this particular community because they really have a lot to offer. If they're provided with the initial environment of education, and they are given the same platform, the same level playing field to receive an education like any other non-disabled kid, you will find that when they grow up, you will have much, much more loyal employees than the non-disabled kids. Why? Because these kids, because of the community they come from, have been discarded, have been considered a burden, have been considered to be useless. When they actually get the opportunity to hold a job, they value that job so much more than any other non-disabled person. Because they value it so much more, you have much more loyalty from them. Please give them the same opportunities that you would to your own son, your own daughter. Many of these kids who come from very poor socioeconomic backgrounds, now that they have an education, they are probably the only member at times, the only sibling of the family that is now an educated member of that family. And the very parents who thought that these kids were useless, were a burden on them, have now turned the tables on their families because they are perhaps at times the sole breadwinners for those families now. The sole breadwinners. So please, please value who they are. Don't discard them.
Thank you very much, Istia, for the comment from the floor. So the gentleman mentioned about the additional facilities for the disabled people. This is actually still a very important issue to each of the organizations, including the government, central government as well as the local government, and also some the organizations who have been involved in this kind of the works. Nobody can guarantee that we can provide such facilities, extra facilities now. But everybody, including myself, has to keep in mind that there are more need from these facilities. You know, there has been a poll in my country, how many disabled people participated in physical exercise. According to the depot, 2012, 11% of the disabled people participate in the physical exercise, almost on a daily basis. Then there is another poll. How many disabled people want to have a physical exercise? The number is 54%. That means between the 11% to the 54%, the discrepancy is 43%. 43% of disabled people wants to play, but they cannot because lack of facilities and programs. Who should take care of this one? Central government, local government, as well as nowadays, many companies, they take part in the corporate social responsibility programs. So I think we all have to consider this as the problem and work together. I will keep in mind.
Thank you, Ambassador Ma. I want to introduce now Anders Kristad. He didn't have a nameplate here earlier, but he has been around. For any of you who have attended the Next Steps conference for the last 4 days, know that he's a person who roams around with an open heart and open arms, and he's designed a program just like that. But I have a formal introduction for you, Kristad, so I'm going to read. Mr. Kristad is the Director of Football for All in Vietnam and works with disadvantaged children and youth in communities in Vietnam to improve their life skills. Since 1997, where the project Football for All in Vietnam was started, 147 new local football clubs have seen daylight. More than 16,000 Vietnamese children are playing in the clubs, and the number is still growing. The organization adheres to values of inclusion, requiring girls to play in equal terms as boys in the clubs, open training for children with learning disabilities, a non-competitive approach in the practice, and seats for children in the club boards. Anders, I have a question. You have mentioned the necessity of beginning a sports for development program that includes all boys, girls, people with disabilities, the LGBT community, and other vulnerable groups into an S4D program right from the get-go. How has this been possible for you in communities with a more traditional mindset?
Thanks for your introduction and your invite. Here, of course. This was not very good, was it? Can I borrow the other one? I think I want to go back to the basics. I think when we look at a diverse society where people are different than ourselves, we need to challenge ourselves about our prejudice, our view on people who are different than us. And I think this is an exercise we all need to do. Because I find that when people are discriminating against one group, for example, disabled, I find the same attitudes also reach out to ethnic minorities, to women, to people with different sexual orientation, and so on. So I see that the exclusion mechanisms that we have inside ourselves, because we're scared of what is different to us or appears strange, we need to challenge this. And we need also to make sure that our organizations make a clear stance on this. I think every sport club in an ideal world will be a mirror of the local community, which it's a part of. And if it's not, there's something wrong. And I think the club need to have a look at itself and decide that we will be open and inclusive and make that a point. We have also designed different exercises and courses to challenge people on just to see what they really think, what they mean. And we also expose people to try out what it's like to be blind. We blindfold them and put them out on the pitch. We put them in a wheelchair so they can try it. That actually does something to you. When you are put in a position that you can feel at least a little bit what it's like to to have a disability or to be a minority or to be excluded from participation. Also, I would like to mention that sport in its purest form is also excluding because it's for the best. Unless you have a really good grassroots approach, which covers for all those who cannot be the winners. Because very few people can be winners. There's like 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million can be a winner. What do we do with the others? Yeah, there's got to be space for them. And meaning that when you decide that you would want to be open and inclusive, you also have to decide that we have to have activities which are adapted and constructed for different kind of abilities. We might, in some cases, use segregated activities to create confidence. We see that very clearly when we work with Muslim women in the sport clubs in Oslo. We need to have segregated activities as a tool to get them into the activity. And after some years, we can kind of integrate or include in a different way. There's no need for segregation. I don't think segregation should be looked at as an objective. On the contrary, it should be used only as a method to end up with an inclusive program. So the exercise starts with ourselves. Very often I find that the legislation in society has done a lot over the last few years. It assures you certain rights. But the obstacles are there still. There might be obstacles which is in our minds when we look at people who are different than ourselves. It must be physical obstacles, accessibility to the clubhouse, to the pitch, things like that. There might be rules, like we heard the example here on the golf rule. That is, golf rules and laws, they're like holy. You know, St. Andrews, the Royal St. Andrews Club, they really decide everything. And I remember we had a discussion with the Golf Association in Norway, said that, well, if that man with one leg are to play golf, you need to let him drive the car. And they said yes. And now this is being accepted within golf that, yes, we can adapt it, as long as it doesn't give you any benefit directly. And I think that is good. When we talk about processes of inclusion and designing programs which are to invite more people to our activity, we should remember one thing, and that is representation. It's very easy to sit up here and being the generous, warm-hearted, open-armed person that you described, and just be good to other people. You know, we heard the charity discussion here, and I think it's very, very important that your target groups, they are your equal partners, and they're invited to the table, and you don't make any decisions without them. We have a slogan in our program saying, nothing about us without us. That goes for the girls, that goes for the disabled, that goes for the ethnic minorities, that goes for anyone. Nothing about us without us. And that is very, very important part. When we look at different tools, I think constructing a sports facility today, that you find a lot of good guidelines on the web, very easy to find and to plan and take into consideration. We heard the example now on the iPhone. I didn't know that, but this is how everything should be approached as far as I'm concerned. You have to look at accessibility. But you also have to find, in some cases, you have to find other tools. For example, what we did in Vietnam to bring the girls into football, because there wasn't any girls playing organized football at all. Not one single girl were in the clubs. We forced it through. We used quotation. As a principle that has been used in the Football Association of Norway since 1989, we use quotation for when we set up the board, when we choose elect the vice presidents. Have to be one of each gender. There have to be at least 40% of each gender represented, both in committees and on the board. And we did exactly the same in Vietnam, but we took it even further. We said 50-50. And everybody there, all the school authorities, the cultural authorities, the football people, they say it's not possible. Girls don't play football. And we said, well, the boys want to play? Yes, they do. Okay, every boy, bring a girl. And it worked. It worked beyond our expectations, really, because after 6 or 7 years with this quotation, which is very rigid, very strict, you cannot enter a team into a competition without entering a boys' team and a girls' team. It has become normal. It's not questioned anymore. Girls play football. When you come to primary school and you ask the kids there who want to play, you have just as many girls as boys. And I think this, I always do like this when I say normal, because what is normal? What is A4? Sports are designed to be A4, which is why it doesn't always work, why we have to change the rules. But we have to sometimes positively discriminate, because there is a difference. If you have nothing and you have $100 and I treat you the same, I give you 10 each, you still have $100 more than you. So maybe I want to level it out and I'll give you 90, so you get closer. And that kind of thinking sometimes make it a little bit difficult for us when it comes to women's participation on boards and so on, and in the company's executive boards. I also strongly encourage you, if you're starting a problem like this, you should go and look very carefully at the baseline. What is the today's situation? Because you want to record the change. You want to record the behavioral change if it's possible. It's not easy. You want to at least you can see the participants. The number of girls are growing. You're becoming more in line with what the local community is, and so on. That is measurable. And it should be measurable, because that is what gives you proof and evidence that this is actually working. Also, I'd like to say that very often when we start projects like this, we start it as a project. We address one specific problem. For example, disabled participation. I would like to see us take it a little bit further and to integrate it into our regular activities. Very often it's a good thing to start it as a project, but try to get it into a natural integrated part of your regular activities, and even better if you can go all the way to mainstream it. I mean, in Vietnam now, in our project, the participation of girls, that is totally mainstream. Nobody asks the question anymore. It's there, and it's overarching, and it's cross-cutting, and we check it. We check it every time we have a course. We check it every time we have a tournament. We check that it's actually in line with what we said. But you need to record it. Cultural context. I've been speaking very general now, even though I used a couple of examples from Vietnam. But I think there are challenges which are different in one society than the other. I don't know a lot about India. I noticed one thing very clearly when I walk the streets here. I don't see many women. I see a lot of men. So obviously there is something that is different from what I'm used to. I think that there will be certain taboos, especially when you speak about sexual orientation. In some countries that is not possible to talk about at all. Some countries even have a death penalty for those who promote homosexuality. We had the discussion now regarding Sochi. Interesting in Vietnam, very, very open on sexual orientation and sexual identity. When you compare to China, which is very natural to compare, where it's absolutely a taboo, and it's punishable, any practice. So my recommendation is to treat all excluding factors as a whole. You know, this is a value in life. This is based on the UN Declaration of Human Rights. That has to be the basis. And you work with yourself, you work with your organization, and then you look at the different obstacles, the physical obstacles, and then you also look at legislation and the form of activities we can do. And I'm sure that sport will be a totally different arena for the society if we can get rid of some of these discriminating factors that are there, and it can be even stronger contributor to development in the society. That is my firm belief, and that is why I work with the project that I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. I want to open the floor out for some last questions. I can hear the crockery.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really impressive. My name is Taku Yamaguchi from Japan. I have the practitioner experience for more than 10 years, over 10 years, especially for disabled activity in Cambodia. I really understand that it's really useful. We can use a tool as a tool for development for disabled people. But it was quite difficult to continue my project due to fundraising as well as understanding. So many people invest the money to craft a handicraft training or some other training for them. But for sports, it's quite difficult to understand someone who invests the money or, supporting our activity. So this is huge theme, so that it's quite difficult to say, but I'd like to ask to the perspective of practitioner, that my question is, how do you think about the sustainability for your activity from a practitioner, and also the perspective of government? So His Excellency Mao.
The way we've been working in Vietnam to talk about the sustainability, because I think that's a key question, and of course we can pay for this. You can put enormous sums of money into that, and you can have every disabled can have their own personal coach and transport back and forth in a Rolls Royce, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So we've got to find a better way to do it. And I think that our approach has been to go through the school system, because most of the children are there, almost all of them in Vietnam. Meaning that we're setting up the clubs in the schools. We also see that there's, even though Vietnam has strong legislation when it comes to the rights of disabled person, it's not being covered because the competence is not there. The teachers haven't been trained, which is a big problem. So we work with the government on the curriculum, both for the teachers in general, especially for the gym teachers, and try to anchor this in the regular school system. That our activities now in Hue province, which is our model province, now in secondary school, this is a regular extracurricular activity for all secondary schools in the province. And it's not being done by us. We do the training, and we do the negotiating with our partners, and then deliver the training. To a certain extent, we have a follow-up, but they have to do it themselves. And I think that is the key for sustainability. All the NGOs sitting here, we should really try our best to make ourselves, not needed. That would be our job. But it's a long way there. But we feel that in Vietnam we've come a long way now, especially when we come in to work on the curriculum, because we can put a lot of the values in there, we can put a lot of the techniques in there, we can put a lot of the principles for high intensity and fun activities, which we believe is very important. We saw one activity yesterday, which I believe had a lot of potential to develop a lot more when it comes to intensity and fun. And I think that is where a lot of the NGOs should consult sports, because actually sports are quite good at this. And I see that many NGOs, they see that sport is an excellent tool, and they start football program without knowing football. So come and share that with us.
We are a group which is non-funded, and we have no money, but meaning the girls love playing football. So when we started, meaning of course Magic Bus supported the initial, but you keep needing money to go forward, right? And so the girls decided that, okay, this is important to us, so what do we do? So they started summer vacation classes for the kids around there. And they've been raising money through very innovative ways just to be able to play that game. So I think, but of course it does not take care of, meaning if one had a proper NGO setup and salaries, I'm sure that we wouldn't be able to raise that kind of money. But yes, if one is talking sustainability, and if you're saying that NGOs the ideal situation would be that people take ownership of those processes, then I think that it's doable. We just have to get a little more creative. I think there's also government funds, meaning they are there in India, and I'm sure they'll be there abroad as well. So how do we channelize this? So like, for the ground, we don't have grounds, but meaning we started looking at the city development plans. We identified parks that have been set aside only for recreation, and meaning the girls initiated a signature campaign to get the elected representative to ensure that the ground is given to them. So meaning the signatures are still being collected. We've collected around 500 already. So those are kinds of things that one needs to think outside of the box. But sometimes I think getting into NGOs also limits our sense of fundraising to only big funders. So I think that's one of the options.
Thank you very much for the Japanese colleagues. I appreciate very much your effort to continue your job for the sports of disabled people. I think it's true that the fund for the disabled people can be disseminated to many people and many governments. But when they talk about fund for the sports for the disabled people, they will stop and think again. But when we want to build a just society which has justice, I think we have to give them equal opportunities. Today, many people said equal opportunities, but I think equal is not enough. The just society should be based on the same opportunities. Same opportunities means same conditions. Same conditions means it is not 1-to-1, 2-to-2. Disabled people, they are disabled. They are under disadvantages. They should have a better chances than normal people. That's why government should give the priority, higher priorities on this issue. But the government usually does not move at their own initiatives. There should be influence. There should be pressure over the government. How we can do that? That is people, NGOs, academics, and medias. They have to say something. They have to address this issue. Then government slowly moves. When we tell to the government, yes, training, education for the handicapped people, they understand. But why we do that? To improve their capabilities. How we can have better capabilities? That is through their confidence. If they have confidence, they can challenge many other things. So how they can have these courages? I think sports is a very good tool to provide them the confidence.
I think I still maintain it's a topical issue and very sensitive. I've never been scared of 2012 in October when I worked somewhere in upper western region of Ghana, in the poorest place in Ghana, when there was this young boy suffering from dwarfism. Apparently after our review, he was the best in the leadership training program. And after the program, he came to me and he said, he's been given the opportunity to express himself. And you know what? The village where he comes from, the father had to run away with him, because when you are born that way, they assume the evil spirit feels you, so they kill you. And I come from Ghana, and it's still happening up to date. So he was in the capital city of the region where he comes from. I'm using region because we have 10 regions. Our country is divided into regions. So just to add to Anders, tradition, culture also plays a role. And I still maintain from yesterday that it is difficult, and these things are social construct, just to just to solve some issues, tackle issues in the society. And the disability action section of what we are talking about is also very sensitive. So we have to look at some of these things, how culture, how traditions plays a role in fighting this issue. What we are doing sounds simple, but it's saving life. This young chap calls me every time, and apparently he's doing very well. He was given the opportunity to express himself, to lead a whole festival and stuff like that. So I commend everyone for the effort so far. Thanks.
My question is, social inclusion and gender inclusion. In my experiences, sometimes there's still misperception of the social inclusion and gender inclusion. Particularly, I will use the example in Thailand. There's a law and there's an act that try to include children with disability, sometimes learning disability and mental disability in the school. And when I go visit the school, and I see various, many disabled children participating with the regular children. But when the activity started or when the school started, there is no engagement or whatsoever in that particular activity. So I really want to hear more in all of you panelists' perspective. Social inclusion, gender inclusion, but do we really engage them? Do we have tools? Do we have anything in particular that really have them involved in this concept of inclusion? The regular children and disabled children.
I think in the schools we'll see the limitation very clearly. That is a lack of knowledge among the teachers. I mentioned that. And that gap is somewhat being filled in Hue, where I live, by some of the pagodas and some of the monasteries and nunneries. They take an active role there, and some of the orphanages also have built special competence on disability and how to work with disability. But I think then in general, we need to make it visible. We need to get them out. And I still see that when we asked the question in 2006, 2005, about the participation of people with disabilities, especially a vulnerable group with the learning disabled, the question we got back from the school authorities was why? Why do you want to do something for them? They cannot contribute to society, which is expected of you in a group-oriented and collective culture. Per definition, they cannot contribute. So why should we do something for them? That was the school authorities who actually said that in 2006. We found that in order for them to open their eyes, we took 8 of these children with learning disabilities. We made them ambassadors for Vietnam and took them to Norway to participate in the tournament. And then they come running with the flag and the musical band when they came back, and then everything was fine from that on. So we raised their, status and made them more visible. And that was one way that did change the perception among the leaders in the education sector in Hue. It cost a bit of money, and it's not about how we want to spend the money, but it did change something there and then. Later on, having listened to the children's stories themselves and to the parents' stories, that is when it touches your heart. When you hear the story about someone sitting on the kitchen floor for 12 hours every day, and now they're outside playing with the other kids in the street, and they wear the uniform, they have the club badge, they belong. You've done something with self-esteem, with self-feeling, with identity feeling, then it's all worth it.
Can I just say, ditto. I took a group of 10 girls to the UK to participate in a small mini Paralympics type tournament. These girls came back. They were met by the chief minister, all of those higher authorities. But the best one was when these girls came back to school after their school holidays, and I said, so how was your holiday this time compared to all the other times when they came back with long faces because nobody wanted to play with them, nobody wanted to include them. This time, Chota said, You know, I actually had a girlfriend this time when was in the village. And I heard my girlfriend say to her mother, do you think if I climbed up this tree, fell down, broke my leg, then do you think I could go to the same school as Chota does? So it's all about perceptions, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about perceptions.
I think that one of the questions, because we do this only girls team, and meaning at least with disability and inclusion, I'm like really, the kind of work Sneh is doing is phenomenal, and so also, and us. I think one of the questions which keeps coming in people's mind is that are we excluding the boys, and how are then we mainstreaming or integrating it with the larger society, and so I think that when we are looking at this sports, we are also looking at sports as being exclusionary, and hence the intervention is to make sports inclusive of various kinds of difference and diversity. So bringing in the disabled, bringing in women, meaning women are half the population, and here meaning we are talking about, we are on the same platform with the disabled, with the LGBT, meaning women, and women are also among the disabled and among the LGBT and so many others. So I think one should, meaning I really liked Anta's presentation where he was speaking of segregated spaces and the need to build confidence, because treating unequals equally is also injustice, right? So I think we should stop getting apologetic about claiming these spaces, claiming the need for segregated women-only, disabled-only spaces. But of course, we need to have a larger vision in mind of, somewhere being able to mainstream, integrate. And I think the onus of this inclusion is not just on those who are marginalized, it's also on those who have so far had the privilege of always claiming these spaces. So, meaning I think that with our limited resources, we also have to decide on where we want to focus our energies, whether it's going to be with the mainstream, whether it's going to be with these marginalized communities.
I am now being given the evil eye. We have to shut this down. I'm really excited that we did get to a conversation, because that's exactly the intention that I had in wanting to plan it like this. I want to say thank you all for making this really a very rich session. And I have to wrap up the nuggets, the gold nuggets that have made this rich. So we got words like disability confidence. We got possibilities, potential, perception, passion, and a paradigm shift. We got one society, and we got nothing about us without us. Words to ponder, and I wish you all the best, and I hope we will see more of you wherever you all are. Very inspiring. Thank you so much.